Hey everybody, Steve here with My Dice. And it's March, so that of course means, as all Ultramarine players know, we march from McCraig for the Primarch, courage and honor! Now, having that gotten out of the way, this is a cool time to be a 40k player. I know a lot of people are suffering through the end of the 10th edition, right? The attention's down, and people played a lot of games, so on and so forth. But it's a really cool time. We've gotten a bunch of cool new book sets out. Obviously, one for Titus. The latest one is for the Tyrant of Badab. What's it? Lugft. I don't know how to say his name. We get to see him being his piratey best. Got some new pirate stuff. And of course, they just announced that we're going to be getting one going back to Cadia Gate with the Iron Warriors. As Perturabo, I guess, has decided to finish up a 1,000-year plan to completely take what's left of the whole Cadian Gate area. Which is really cool. What's got me really excited, and it's kind of funny, I think the stuff's already probably connected, but there was channels asking, what was the largest size of game you ever played, right? Not to name drop, but you've seen Mini War Games had a Mini War Gaming Dave there, so I had massive Apocalypse games, some well-known people throughout the YouTube community, which looked amazing. But that all came to head with the Games Workshop releasing what's going to be in the next book or box of books for this whole piratey goodness they got. Army booty. And one of those books was Apocalypse. So, and that has me really, really excited. Going back to the question, the largest game I ever played was probably about 80,000 points. That was 40,000 points per side. So when I worked at Games Workshop during one of the initial runs of Apocalypse. Now, I've said the name a bunch. You guys may not know what that means. You may not understand what the heck I'm saying. Apocalypse was Warhammer on a massive scale. Floorhammer, if you will. That was a big thing because you needed space. Now, this is where it was basically take whatever you had. Didn't matter what. You could have a full-fledged 2,000 point Space Marine army and a smattering of little things. Maybe you have some Tau here. Maybe you have some Eldar. Maybe some Imperial Guard. Maybe you have a couple Titans. Didn't matter. You could take it. There were special formations for every army. You could take a full company of Space Marines. You could take 3 Vindicators. You could take massive Titans. It was the original game in which you could use Bane Blades and all those assorted varieties of massive tank Thunderhawks. Anything was a go. And it now that seems like a lot, and it is. It was a ton. You put models down everywhere. But things died quick. You had what was called D-weapons. Now, D-weapons meant basically instant death, destruction, death, whatever you wanted. That's what a D-weapon was. And it took the small templates, you know, your like mini template, the small, the large blast template, and that flamer template. I don't have any on me right now. I seem to have misplaced them. But Apocalypse supersized them. So you had like a pie plate for a large, like the massive template. The blast template gave 4 smaller ones all combined into one. I think it was actually 5, the whole formation. And then there was a massive flamer template. Things died in droves. You could lose 50 models in a turn easy. It was massive. And as it expanded, more formations came out with special rules for blowing up stuff. There was a really cool Librarius Conclave where you could take a chunk of the table. Now, this is when they had, Games Workshop had those modular tables, the 6-piece tables. You would take a whole section up. Everything section was destroyed, gone, and you'd flip it over. That part of the table was no longer usable, just gone. It was crazy. It was just having tons of fun. There wasn't really any objectives. The fun was just putting all your models on the table, rolling just buckets and buckets worth of dice. And you could interconnect tables. This one event, this was a mass event, about 40,000 per side. We'd set a number of tables up. And they just tables going everywhere. The coolest part, the biggest part was we had a Titan go up. I think it was either Warhound or a Reaver. I can't remember. I think it was a Reaver. I'm not sure. It was destroyed. And so when it went critical, which is one of the rules for it's sort of like that, the way things can blow up now and you can deal mortal wounds, right? This was like that times 1,000. It was 66 inches, not 60, but 66 inches away, was basically the shockwave. And it was a D-weapon destruction, which meant anything that was caught in that was gone. Terrain, models. In the original version, you could get invulnerable saves against D-weapons. They changed that in the next edition of it to not allow invulnerable saves. So we watched as basically probably about a good third to maybe 2/3 of the table just evaporated. Just everything was removed. Terrain. Creed from the Imperial Guard, good old Usarka E. Creed, was the only guy to roll his invulnerable save. So he was stuck in the middle. Everything around him gone. And we had later games, weren't as big, but we actually had the tables interacting with each other. So we had a table that we set up, 2 big 6x4 tables, sparse terrain with a like barrack sort of model right in the middle, some sort of control area. And we put the broken, not terrain, what was it? The impact, the craters all around. It was supposed to be like a moon. Basically our version of the Death Star, without being the Death Star. If you can control that control center until starting your next turn, you could fire that weapon and use a massive apocalypse-sized template on another table. Funny enough, it never happened because it was such a gory mess. People throwing units in, just destroying each other. It was crazy. That's what's so cool about Apocalypse. But we did, again, in that game, we had another Titan go up. And it was Dark Angels and Titans and some Imperial Guard against Chaos on another table. The Knight went up. Sorry, not the Knight. The Titan went up. And basically all we're left for was the heavy weapons on either end. Then they had to start moving in to start lobbing shots at each other. It was so far apart because you're playing lengthwise for Apocalypse games. This is one of the cool ways you could do it. We also had a table that was filled with artillery. And so it was able to launch at all the other tables. The people just had to guess from the edge of the table and put it down. And so there was people dropping drop pods and whatever on that table to stop the artillery, and there were defense units there. That's the cool thing about Apocalypse. I believe it was 8th or 9th edition, we got a new version. And it didn't do well. It had all these tokens, new science. Basically, you were learning a new game, which is not cool at all. That is not the way that it should have been done. I'm glad they got rid of it. It wasn't very good. I read through and went, this is not Apocalypse. I shouldn't have to learn a new game in order to play a massive game of 40K. So I'm not sure what these rules are going to fully give us in terms of, apparently it does streamline things, so it's easier to play a massive game. It'll be cool to just see models disappear in poofs of smoke. It was no problem to see like a full-size army just gone in one turn, with just all the shooting and explosions. There were cool things like aerial bombardments at the beginning of the game, lance strikes. You had vortex grenades. And if you remember what a vortex grenades, you know how much fun they were, but how they could seriously backfire in your face so very badly. It was cool to have these massive tanks that you couldn't use a standard game. It was cool to see people bring out Thunderhawks and just lay waste of stuff around them while dropping off just tons and tons of Space Marines in the battle. It was like seeing those epic pictures you see on the covers of books and a lot played out in front of you. There's even the picture. I remember the picture for the first book was Vestroyan and Vestroyan Guard and Space Wolves fighting off against orcs. And if you just, the cover was just this massive global fight. Thunderhawks, Stompas, the whole thing, massive tank formations. It was crazy. And the formations, you could make your own. I've mentioned before, I have my Lehman's Thunder Rhino, which I got from, which is inspired by the original version of the Visions of Heresy book before they redid it after the Horus Heresy series came out. It's an open-topped, just a double-wide Rhino, and I played that in a bunch of Apocalypse games, and it got a lot of Space Marines out to where they needed them to go to fight stuff. It was fun. I'm hoping that the new version of Apocalypse can get us back to there, making up new models. I hope they come with detachments or these data sheets or whatever you want to call them, where we can get special formations of things that get special rules to aid in just blowing stuff up. They had stuff for everything. You could have a full heavy company of guard, which is just all heavy weapons. I mean, a lot of stuff you can do now. That's the beauty about it. But I'd like to see cool rules for just targeting big things, blowing things out of the sky. You had one that was all dreadnoughts and drop pods. You had some that was like 3 Thunderhawks and a whole ton of Marines to go with them. Just crazy stuff. The Corn Order Skulls was an Apocalypse thing at one point. It was in there as something you could play just in Apocalypse. Now, we've seen armies with them everywhere. So that is one thing that's got me super excited right now is Apocalypse, because it's a great way to just get everything out. You don't have to worry about all this other stuff. I'm sure there'll be cards to go with it. I'm sure there'll be stratagems to go with it. They may change up the rules for it a bit to make objectives easier to do. I don't know if that's secondaries, just primaries. It may just be go have fun and blow stuff up. The other cool thing that has me excited is a lot of these rumors around 11th edition and the way they're going to change up objectives and terrain. Because now I played a lot of games since a year before this January, not this last January, year before that. The one thing that I can say is the terrain is boring. It's always these L-shaped buildings, very strict on the bases. Even if you're playing narrative games or friendly games, everyone wants to play with these. And so the battlefields have all looked the same, which, I mean, is okay. It's fun to still play the games. I've even printed out some 3D terrain, and it's a lot of L-shaped buildings because that's what fits now. And you put your objectives down. The objective might be in a building, it might be around a building, but it's just there. It's this dot on the table, which is cool. I get it. But it is kind of boring. Apparently, in 11th edition, the terrain itself may be an objective. You'll be setting up the terrain around, hopefully in a better variety than just a lot of L-shaped buildings. I know this is kind of nitpicky, but it is something that I kind of like, okay, we're putting down the same terrain again in a very limited variety of formats, but I would like to see that. You're going for a building, or maybe there's resources or some sort of techno secret, or who knows what. Maybe if you play Chaos, there's cultists that you have to sacrifice in that building. But I'm hoping that rumor is true, that we're going to see buildings being the objective, which makes more sense instead of like, everybody go to that dot in the middle of no man's land and stand there and hopefully don't get killed. No, it's like, okay, we got to take that building because that one's got the access codes that we need in order to open up that building. Not to say that they'll be interconnected like that, but it would, I think, narratively, even for competitive games, it'll be a bit more, it'll make a little bit more sense other than go objective. Which is, it's a lot like the old red or blue versus blue armies where you have Marines banging up against Marines or Orcs. It was fun, but it was kind of meh. But yeah, so that was my sort of blurb for today. We are in March now, the March for McCraig. I'm going to be doing something for that. I'm actually on vacation right now, which is great. I'd love to get stuff done, but I've found myself with almost zero motivation to do anything, which is fun, but also a bit sad because I'd like to get stuff done, but I've been so busy. I've been burnt out in some ways, and I'm just trying to get my mojo back. You know what I mean? So it's been a ramble, but that's what these are. The other cool thing I just came back to, I was going to mention before, is that word I use, floor hammer. And this is just this isn't really an educational thing. I just always find it funny how things go full circle. I mentioned a little while ago on some of the posts on some of my other social media, one of my favorite shows, Murdoch Mysteries, had an episode where they mentioned H.G. Wells' Little Wars, which was really cool. I'm like, oh man, they're mentioning H.G. Wells' Little Wars. It's a perfect time for it. The main character, Detective Murdoch, mentioned he played with his son, and one of the suspects they're after snuck away. He escaped the jail and snuck away to his little cabin because he wanted to play with his little wars. He was actually cheating. It's not good. Bad guy. But it brought, and you could see these big tables, not super big, but big tables that are playing on, which is very cool. But one of the cool things that Apocalypse has brought up is floor hammer, and one of the original ways that H.G. Wells set up these games was on the floor or out in his yard on the ground. So you're actually playing on the floor, on the ground. You can see videos of Peter Cushing, Grand Moff Tarkin, when they did these, it was British Pathé had these old reels from, I think, the 50s of him. They're saying, you know, here he is painting miniatures, playing on the floor. So it's funny how we went from playing on the floor to tables and all, then back to playing on the floor again. And I've played Floorhammer a bunch of times. It's a lot of fun. Set up your table or your floor, or your country, as it was called in H.G. Wells' Little Wars. It was really cool to see how it always goes full circle. But I'll leave it there, guys. Thank you very much for listening to my ramble. Just want to get some stuff out there. Celebrate it being March from McCrae. And there is stuff coming for that. But I just want to cover these cool things. Apocalypse being back makes me very excited. It'll be cool to see these massive tables again. I can't wait to see a White Dwarf where they actually do an Apocalypse game again. It's also always cool to see. And I'm hoping that the stores and other places will put Apocalypse games together once the book's out. So we just get as many people in a room as possible, just blowing the heck out of stuff. It's so much fun. If you haven't done it, read up on it. Try and get the new book or the new rules when they come out. And I hope everybody enjoys the heck out of it because it's a fun, fun time. All right, as always, guys, on to dare. Keep rolling those dice, and I will see you later. Bye.